the Staccato P, or is it the STI Staccato P? I'm still confused about that. But regardless, today we're going to talk about the 2011 that people consider the duty-rated 2011. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to give you my background. Not former military, never been in law enforcement. I'm just a guy who likes guns. I actually work in sales and marketing in the gun industry for high-end gun companies. So for me, I look at guns, and when I see a firearm, I think, why would somebody want to purchase this, and who is this really for? Now, if you're looking for someone who's going to ever dump on a company, that's just not my style, because if a gun is selling and people like it, there's obviously a reason for it. So I'm not out there to poo-poo anything, but I will give you my honest opinion on what I think is legit and what I think might be a little bit of a marketing overreach by some companies. So, read into that what you will. Now, jumping in to the Staccato P, the gun company formerly known as STI, is the gun called the P, or is it the Staccato P? Because if it's the Staccato P and the company's now Staccato, would that mean it's the Staccato P? And if it's, now let's say it's the other way, and the gun is called the P, does that mean people at Staccato are walking around going, hey, what are you carrying today? Oh, I'm carrying a P. I'm carrying a C, I'm carrying an XC. A little bit confusing, but I think as time goes on, people will figure it out. So right off the bat, I'll just give you my honest opinion. This is a very good gun. Bear in mind, if you're looking for a high-end custom 2011, this is not it. STI, the original STI, is the company that pioneered the double stack frame, not the para style, but the two-piece double stack. So this is the OG company that started the 2011 craze. They patented 2011s. I think it was back in the 90s. I'm not Forgotten Weapons, so I don't know when it happened, but I just know that it happened back when I was watching Super Mario Brothers on Saturday mornings. So that's the kind of the history of this gun. 2011s, if you're not aware, it is a 1911 mostly internally. So it's going to have a lot of the same internals. I talked about this with the Triarch. So the same fire control system, the same extraction system, same ejector. They just made some modifications to the trigger and then added a double stack magazine. Now, why is it a two-piece lower? Well, that's because in order to get the wider trigger bow in, you have to have a two-piece lower to actually get the trigger installed and get a double stack magazine in there. So that's a little bit of history on the 2011. Now, why would you want to carry a double stack for duty? And I'm going to talk about this as a duty gun. Bear in mind, I have no duty experience, but this is what they bill it as, a duty weapon. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, I mean, the capacity is pretty average. 17 rounds with the standard magazine. They include 3 mags in the box, which I think is actually a nice touch. 2 of them are 20 rounds. One of them is 17, which is the flush bottom. The biggest things that you're going to get is obviously the trigger pull. So I've talked about this before. The reason I love 1911s and 2011s is the trigger just is way better than anything you're going to find on a striker fire gun. Even the nicest striker fire gun isn't going to come close to a mid-grade, well built 2011, because this trigger just goes straight back, nice wall, and it's a very defined wall. And then the hammer drops. It's very, very dependable and very reliable when you know where the wall is going to be and where the reset is going to be each time. Talking specifically about the P here, it's 4.4 inches on the barrel, which I actually find kind of an odd length. Typically government guns are going to be 5-inch, commanders are 4.25. 4.4 inches. Sometimes I think companies do things different just to be different. This may be one of those cases, but they did say they did some research and found that 4.4 inches was the best sight radius. I don't know if 0.15 inches on a sight radius is going to do anything. So, call that what you will. It just makes holster selections a little bit more complicated. But some of the things that I like on the gun, so starting off with that, I work in the custom world, and typically when you're looking at a production gun, and this is a production gun, this is not a custom gun. It is what it is. They manufacture them in, high tolerance, but it's high production. So they're just cranking these things out. So normally in the custom world, you're looking for a really good frame to slide fit. And so when I got this gun, I was actually shocked at how good the frame to slide fit is. It is very tight. Now, it's smooth. It's not quite as smooth as you would find with a hand lap gun, but there's nothing wrong with that for a duty gun. It's still going to be a million times smoother than, you know, your average Glock or SIG or even some of the custom ones out there, just the way the frame and slider fit together. So very, very tight fit. You know, they did a very good job on that. Other things that I like, the finish, they went with DLC, which is short for diamond like carbon. A lot of black guns you'll see are either going to be nitriding, which is a heat treatment process. Cerakote's very common now, or Duracoat or some type of, you know, black tea type of finish. A lot of Wilsons have that too. DLC is a very hard and tough finish, but just bear in mind that it can scratch. And DLC, not all DLCs are the same. Some of them turn out a little gray, and I don't want to say chalky, but they're not black. And this is definitely more on the gray side of DLC. So when you put some gun oil on it, the gun oil is definitely going to stand out, and it can feel kind of dry to the touch, but that's just because it's mass-produced DLC. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not really showing any signs of holster wear. I did a course with it, you know, and it's holding up very, very well. A couple other things. I'm kind of neutral on this. They did a bull barrel, you know, with the full-length guide run, did a bull barrel system there. And that's going to add a little bit extra weight up front, which is good. If you want to mitigate recoil, putting more weight up at the front of the barrel is definitely a good way to do that. Another thing, super cool, they put a larger slide stop / slide release. I'm not going to get into the debate on whether it's a slide stop or a slide release, because it technically does both of them, but it's a little bit larger paddle. Now, my hands, and I've said this before, I am the poster child of average. So I'm an average shooter, average height, and this right here is going to be your average hand size. And I still have a little bit of trouble getting up on that slide stop, slide release. So I still come up over the top when I'm doing reloads on 2011s. But if you have a little bit larger hand, that extra real estate there is going to do you well. Ambi safety standard, so very important for duty guns, is, you know, with the thumb safety. So I know people that are coming from striker fire guns, they're going to go, what's the deal with this thumb safety? Well, on 2011s and 1911s, they have two safeties, a grip safety, which is really a drop safety. So this is going to make sure that the trigger can't be pulled unless you're gripping on to the grip and you've got a good grip. So this can mess people up if they're not used to it. Also, the thumb safety, it just adds an extra level of protection, because these triggers on 1911s and 2011s, you know, sometimes they can be a little bit touchy. So having an extra safety is a good thing. But it's ambidextrous. So whether you're a lefty, you need to flick that safety on with your left hand, or you're a righty and you're being tactical and training offhand, which is probably just a good thing to do anyway. I suck offhand. You know, you got your ambi safety there for that. Very positive, clicks on, clicks off. It's a clicker. It does a good job there. Also, I got the Staccato P. I didn't even talk about price, because if you're looking at this video, you know that they start at $2,000. I got the Duo with the Dawson Universal Optic System. And I'm, you know, I like the fact that you can mount a red dot, because red dots are the now. They're not the future, they're here to stay. So having the option of mounting any type of an RMR footprint, so Holosuns, Trigicons, all that stuff, that's nice. It also does the Delta Point Pro, which I really haven't used much of. But being able to swap your optic from a red dot to iron sight, so you can put a little plate back on here, it's inside the bag. I'm going to cover this in a second. That's cool. Personally, I think a red dot gun should just stay a red dot gun and don't be swapping them on and off. They say that this should maintain a 0. I wouldn't want to trust that. I would just have this thing where I'd always want to re-zero a gun every time I'd take the optic off. So for me, the ability to swap off isn't that big of a deal, but for some people, they really like it. They have the Dawson front sight. They went with a green fiber front, which I like red personally, but this is smart. I don't know if they did this on purpose, and this is the reason why, but they put a green fiber front tube in there, which is helpful, because when you have a red dot and a red front sight, it could get a little bit confusing if you don't get the dot in the window right when you bring the gun up. So having a green dot, which I'm not used to looking at anyway, the red dot, you know, always is the thing that I see in the window. So kudos on them for that. The trigger, so it's a 2011 trigger, very good. It's heavier than I would normally like. I like a trigger between 3 and 3.5 pounds. I've had it tested. I had somebody test it with a Wheeler gauge and it was like 3.9 pounds. I got an average of 4.5 pounds over 10 pulls. Now, the thing about it is it just, the take up is heavier. So the initial spring to take up the trigger feels heavier. And then the wall, I mean, when I first picked it up, I thought it was like a 5 or 6 pound trigger. It felt pretty heavy. I was actually shocked at what the gauge said. But it is light, but it's not so light that you're going to be uncomfortable carrying it for duty. So very much a duty trigger, not so much of a competition style trigger. Getting on to some other things that they do really well. The packaging. I mean, when you're paying $2,000 plus for a gun, you definitely want to have nice packaging to come with it, even though it's a production gun. But the packaging is really cool. You get a nice range bag. This goes in my stack of bags. Oh, by the way, I bought this gun. So I don't get free guns, even though I work for gun companies. Sometimes I do, but this isn't one of them. So I paid for this gun because I wanted to shoot it and give my honest opinion and see what I liked about it. So I paid for it. This is mine. This is my bag. So comes with a nice bag. Built for Heroes, made in Texas. I've actually got my Texas shirt on right now to show some Texas pride. That's where I live. It comes with 3 magazines. I'm going to talk about these in just a second. But 3 of the latest generation. I think they're generation 3. Don't quote me on that, but it comes with 3 magazines. But also, the cool thing is, I felt like a kid again, because when you open the bag, it's like Legos in here. So if you remember building your Lego sets, and for me it's not that long ago, because I've got kids, it has all these little baggies in it with numbers, and all of the numbered baggies do something different. So obviously there's different fiber optic tubes. There's all the stuff for your Dawson Universal Optic System in here. So it's nice to have these extra parts. It just makes you feel like you can customize your gun a little bit. And then it comes with 3 different recoil springs. So 1 for heavy loads, 1 for medium, and 1 for light. I'm not sure what's actually in the gun right now. So 3 different recoil springs. I've been told that it's more the mainspring that's going to slow down the slide cycling or speed it up if it needs to be. So I don't know how much of changing your recoil spring is going to change the way your gun runs, but I'll tell you what, it makes you feel like you can do something to help your gun run better, even if it is just in your mind. Manuals, locks, all that stuff. But I just like that they added all that extra stuff in there. Now, those are the things that I like overall. A very good gun, very good production duty gun. In fact, it's a fantastic gun. Some of the things that personally I had some issues with, and this is something that it's tough because you don't get to test some of these high-end guns sometimes before you buy them, especially when you get into the higher-end customs, your Gucci Glocks, that kind of stuff. So, I like to tell people what I've experienced, and if it's your experience too, great. But one thing that they did is they bobbed the grip safety. So if you look here, they actually shaved off the back part of the grip safety, the beaver tail, it's even with the butt of the gun, and I get what they were doing. It's probably for concealment. But what I will say is when I go to grab it, the webbing of my hand has a tendency to hit that where I normally grab. Normally it would slide down if it was a 1911 or 2011. It just tends to hit that and it kind of hurts. So I had to adjust my my purchase the way I grabbed the gun. So that's number one. If you're riding real high on the gun too, they narrowed it here at the, oh, that's kind of fun. I'm sweaty. Okay. They narrowed the bobbed grip safety in the back here, which helps a little bit if you're getting a higher grip on the gun, but it just, the top of the gun feels wide even for a 2011, especially when you're riding on a thumb over type of grip. So I ride thumb over on the thumb safety, and it's just a little wide on top. Also, speaking of wide, the grip's pretty big on a 2011. And this texture that they added, it looks cool, and it's, got their star, but it's not super comfortable. So this is definitely something, if I were to keep carrying this gun or use this gun more, I would want to get this stippled, because after a few hundred rounds at a course, I switched to a different gun because I was getting some just high points that really aren't comfortable. It was mostly right here around the magazine release on the right side. And then right back here, this corner is just a little bit sharp for me. So it didn't feel good. Not that a gun has to feel good, but you know, it didn't seem to add any grip. So definitely something that you'd want to get stippled to get better grip and have something that feels a little more comfortable in the hand. Now, one thing that they've improved over previous guns is going to be the magazine. One of the things that people have talked about 2011s before is over insertion of their magazine. So what can happen, and I'll show you on an old magazine, what can happen is when you insert a magazine in, if you're doing it with extreme prejudice and you insert the magazine, the magazine release is kind of pushed in there. So I let it go and the magazine release is technically still pushed in. So I pull it down and the button pops out, not a big deal, but the magazine over inserted. This happens for me on the old 20 round magazines inside the Staccato P. If I do it hard enough, I did have one time where it rendered the gun inoperable because it was actually jammed up in there. I could not strip the magazine out no matter how hard I tried, and I had to do something that looked a little dangerous with a screwdriver and pound it out the top. That's with the old magazines. So Staccato went and they redesigned the base pad, which is really cool for another reason. So they made the base pad on the 20 round magazines taller, so it actually hits the bottom of the grip and prevents from over insertion. So I push it in there, it's over inserted a little bit, but it pops right down. So the base pad, the taller base pad, prevents that. Also, these base pads, the new ones are aluminum. The old ones were plastic. They still have the Texas star, but they actually got rid of Texas on the bottom, so whatever. But this aluminum base pad, it's much stronger. So before, with the old magazines, I could drop them, and if I had a couple rounds in it and it hit a rock, sometimes the little Texas star would get hit, the plastic would just fall off, and the magazine would explode and I'd lose pieces. So that happened to me before. No such thing with the new base pad on the new magazine. So much more positive, a little more weight at the bottom, a little more to grab onto. They got some texture here, so when you're stripping a magazine out, if you'd have to do that, grabbing a magazine out of your pouch, a little bit more grip there. So if you're looking for a duty rated 2011, and you don't want to go up to like a Triarch or something along those lines, going with the Staccato / STI is going to be the way to go. They're the ones that came up with the 2011. It's a fantastic gun. The price for what you're getting is very, very reasonable. I know people go, man, that's expensive. But I'm going to tell you, to make these parts is not cheap. Just the parts cost alone in one of these guns is going to be substantial. So you're really getting a lot for your money to have a duty rated 2011 from Staccato. So yeah, if you've been thinking about it, go pick one up. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Couple of gripes here and there, but nothing that can't be fixed with a soldering iron and maybe switching out your grip safety.